Have you ever walked past a rusted bike frame and wondered if it still had one more story to tell? What if your garden's most beautiful border came from something no one believed in anymore? Welcome to Modhouse DIY, where old parts find new purpose and small corners bloom with big ideas. In this video, we're exploring DIY rustic garden borders and fence decor using old bike parts. There are timestamps below. Feel free to jump where you need. And if something sparks a question, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Disclaimer: all the images here are created for inspiration only, some with help from AI tools. That means details might not always be perfect, but the idea is real, and it's yours to reimagine. Use what you have. Start where you are. Let your own hands bring it to life. To you, I might just be a quiet voice on your screen. But behind this project is a real story and a small family. Every like, comment, and subscribe keeps that dream alive. So thank you, not just for watching, but for seeing me. There's a quiet poetry in giving old things a second life. In a small backyard garden, where gravel crunches softly underfoot and the scent of lavender lifts with the breeze, bicycle wheels once made for speed now stand still, not forgotten, but reimagined. Their circular forms rise rhythmically along the edge of a flower bed, rusted and weather-worn, as if time itself has etched their stories into metal. Sunlight filters through the spokes, casting lacy shadows that dance between blooming marigolds and violet salvia. It feels like a place built from memory and motion, where the past rolls gently into the present. And yet, this isn't just art. It's function wrapped in whimsy. A garden border made from old bike wheels offers more than structure. It becomes a fence without sharpness, a barrier without walls. It welcomes air and light. And perhaps best of all, it welcomes story, each wheel different, some worn thin, others bent slightly, some still spinning freely if touched. They're anchored into the soil with simple wooden or metal stakes, spaced just far enough to let plants breathe, close enough to whisper continuity. For those hoping to try this at home, don't be afraid of mismatched wheels. In fact, variety brings charm. You can leave them bare, allowing rust and patina to become part of the aesthetic, or go bold. Paint them sage green, soft gray, or even pastel lavender. Let ivy weave through the spokes like time threading itself into the frame. Or add twinkling solar lights, as seen in a narrow side yard turned magical, where daisy faces peer between wheels and foxgloves stretch proudly upward, their blooms reaching toward the sun like soft trumpets of joy. This DIY idea thrives in small spaces. It needs no heavy tools or expensive supplies. Old bicycle wheels can be found discarded in alleyways, garage sales, or even your neighbor's forgotten shed. What's important isn't their condition, it's your intention. When placed lovingly into soil, they transform. Not into something they once were, but into something entirely new. A boundary that grows, a fence that flourishes. And in the raised beds, behind soft green spokes, lettuce unfurls like layered paper fans, and tomatoes blush red under leafy shade. Nature works alongside the metal, softening every angle. It's proof that even the most unexpected materials, when placed with care, can become beautiful, useful, and enduring. Here, amidst the quiet hum of bees and the creak of old spokes in the breeze, a garden tells a story that rolls forward, not with haste, but with harmony. All it takes is a few forgotten wheels, a patch of earth, and the will to see potential where others see scrap. Let the border begin, not just between garden and path, but between the discarded and the reborn. There is a quiet rhythm to old chains, not in how they once turned wheels or shifted gears, but in how they now trace the earth's soft edge, like punctuation between gravel and green. In a humble garden, where lettuce rises plump and clean from the soil and spinach fans out in wide, rich leaves, the border doesn't shout. It hums. Made from welded bike chains, rusted, repurposed, and lined with patience, these unlikely garden edges become a line drawn not with precision, but with poetry. They slither along curved paths like metallic vines, embedded gently into the dirt. Each link tells its own story, of miles ridden, of grease and grit and forgotten motion. And yet here they are still, holding the earth not in tension, but in care. One chain hugs the path where calendulas blaze orange and nasturtiums sprawl with joy, their petals rising like sunbursts from the dark soil. Another forms a square around leafy greens, its loops small, almost ornamental, like the detailing of old iron gates. The contrast between rough rust and fresh life makes you pause. This is not junk. This is intention. What makes this idea special isn't the materials, it's how they're used. You don't need perfect chains or matching finishes. In fact, mismatched metal, one copper, one steel, one blackened with age, creates a richer texture. Anchor them with rebars or short stakes, let them fall in loose curves or taut lines, and let them age. The weather will finish the design for you. And this approach is forgiving. Even a beginner can piece together a segment of fence or edging in an afternoon. No welding required, just strong wire, reused bolts, or gravity itself. The imperfections make it charming. A few chips of rust, a crooked line, a sagging chain. They speak of hands that worked, of effort made with heart, not factory precision. On patios, among bricks darkened by time, these old chains loop and dip in graceful sways between iron rods, like garlands strung low for a celebration only the garden understands. Lavender, thyme, and oregano spill over gently, softening every angle, weaving green between the steel. And that is the beauty. It's not a fence that separates. It's a boundary that invites, a frame for growth, a stage for vegetables and flowers alike. So if you find yourself with a box of old bike chains, don't throw them away. Let them circle your garden in loops and laughter. Let them hold back the soil, guide the foot, and cradle the bloom. For in every rusted link, there's still life, waiting not to move forward, but to stay and grow roots. Not all gardens begin with seeds. Some begin with the rusted clang of a forgotten drum. In the quiet corners of patios, where sunlight stretches across tile and shadows fall softly from a folding chair, old metal barrels rise not as refuse, but as vessels of renewal. Their forms, once used to store, now overflow with life. And in that transformation lies the heart of something truly meaningful. Look closely. The colors catch the eye first. A trio of drums painted cheerfully in sky blue, sunflower yellow, and forest green. Chipped here and there, revealing patches of old steel beneath, they wear their age with grace. Petunias tumble over one edge, geraniums lean into the light, and bright zinnias dance like fireworks in slow motion. This isn't perfection. It's personality. These planters are a masterclass in practical reuse. Metal drums, half-cut or whole, offer incredible volume for roots to spread, making them perfect for herbs, flowers, and even tall vegetables. The metal retains warmth, helping tender roots thrive. And their vertical form, it saves space. Even the tiniest patio gains presence when one of these planters stands guard. In another quiet scene, an orange, time-worn barrel lays gently on its side, sliced open and packed with rosemary, basil, sage. The herbs rise thick and green, exhaling scent into the morning air. A trowel rests nearby, the seat cushions fluffed for someone to return. It feels like a place made for reflection, for slow coffee, for fingers to brush through leaves and feel the rough edge of steel. Not all barrels need a fresh coat. The unpainted drums, silvered and dented, carry their past with honesty. In one garden, they stand tall, steady beside a white wall, anchoring a forest of tomatoes and peppers. Bamboo poles rise from their soil like sails on a windless ship, guiding the green upward. Chili peppers dangle, bright and heavy, and tomatoes blush with ripeness. These are containers made for growing, not just showing. If you wish to try this yourself, the process is beautifully simple. Drill a few drainage holes. Line the base with gravel or shards. Then fill with rich soil, water, and hope. Whether your drums stand tall or lie down low, whether they are painted with joy or left with the marks of use, they will carry your plants well. And so the garden grows, not from what was bought, but from what was reclaimed. The drums don't pretend to be delicate. They stand firm, unafraid of age, of dents, of rust. And through that, they remind us that strength and beauty often come from what others leave behind. Let the petals bloom from steel. Let herbs rise from rust. Let your garden sing, not only in flowers, but in the joy of making something old matter again. Sometimes, the most unexpected pieces bring the greatest charm. In this garden, where black-eyed Susans sway like yellow suns and bee-balm dances in lavender tones, the border isn't made of stone, or timber, or factory-finished plastic. It's made of lids. Paint-can lids, each one once pried open in a moment of intention, a room refreshed, a wall reborn, now gathered in the soil, reborn again in a different way. There's something joyful in their arrangement. Some are upright, like pastel buttons stitched along a seam of earth, mint green, soft peach, lilac, silver gray, all bearing the traces of human touch. You can see brush marks, dings, even small scratches that glint faintly when caught by sunlight. They form a line that doesn't try to be perfect, only honest and gently playful. Elsewhere, laid flat into the path like metallic stepping stones, the lids shift into rhythm, red, blue, silver, creating a mosaic that glows with personality. They ripple across the walkway like coins scattered in celebration, with white alyssum blooming at their edges like lace. A petal falls, a breeze carries dust, but the pattern remains. It becomes part of the garden's language, part of its memory. And then, there's the mirrored row. An S-curve winding through a shaded patio, each lid catching bits of sky, green, movement. The reflections flicker like shallow puddles after rain. Low-growing thyme and creeping jenny embrace the path on both sides, blurring the line between man-made and natural. A weathered bench waits beneath vines, a resting place not just for bodies, but for the thoughts that trail behind them. The beauty of this DIY idea lies in its simplicity and in its invitation. No special tools, no heavy labor, just lids, soil, and intention. Drill holes for drainage if planting nearby. Paint them or don't. Let rust show, let age whisper. What once sealed away color can now become color itself. If you have a pile of old lids waiting in a corner of your garage, consider this: they're already round, already tough, already storied. And in the garden, where things grow slowly and beautifully, that history matters. So line your path not with what's new, but with what's been through something. Let it border your blooms, mark your walkways, and catch the light in ways that only reuse can. Because in a world where everything moves fast and gets thrown away, a row of lids in the soil says something quietly rebellious. It says, I remember, I repurpose, I create beauty, not from what I buy, but from what I already have. There's a peculiar peace in contradiction, and that's exactly what you feel when standing beside a fence built from discarded CPUs. Once designed to run systems, calculate data, and power the intangible world of code, these metallic frames now exist in the most grounded way imaginable, nestled between wooden posts in a small backyard garden. The wind passes freely through the punch-outs where USB ports once lived. Ivy twines upward through fan vents and power supply holes. Nature climbs what technology has left behind. And somehow it fits. The fence stands like an urban mosaic, not uniform, but thoughtful. Some panels are bright silver, still catching light like they're eager to reflect the sun. Others have weathered to rust, giving them a kind of earthiness that belongs here. The variety of textures, grid slots, small circular holes, rectangles and diagonals, creates a visual rhythm that's almost musical. It turns a tech graveyard into something soft and architectural. The marigolds at the base are in bloom, vivid orange and yellow bursts against cool metal and dark mulch. Snapdragons lean toward the panels as if curious about their new neighbors. And when the sunlight hits just right, the grid patterns cast shadows like lace onto the soil, geometric, delicate, and unexpected. This is where the magic of reuse comes alive. Because these CPU frames weren't built for beauty. But when aligned with care, some vertical, some tilted just so, they become art. They become a trellis, a screen, a conversation. DIYers with patience and vision can recreate this with little more than a handful of old PC towers and a drill. Attach each frame securely between posts, making sure to leave room for light and air to pass through. Don't worry about perfection. Let the rust show. Let the corners misalign a bit. That's where personality lives. One scene shows a narrow garden bed in the city. No lawn. Just a row of panels leaning into a stucco wall, ivy spilling like green ink across processors and ports. It's not polished. It's not staged. And that's what makes it powerful. Because this is a place built by hand, by intention, by someone who saw something more. In a time when gardens are often filtered, curated, and sold to us, this one whispers instead. It says, here's what I had. Here's what I made. And here's what grew anyway. You don't need a tech background to see the beauty. You just need eyes that notice, hands that tinker, and a heart willing to turn scrap into something that matters again. Let old machines rest where flowers grow. Let fences hum with memory. Let your garden, even the smallest one, reflect the world not only as it is, but as it could be. In a quiet corner of the garden, where the soil splits gently under the weight of summer's heat, something peculiar stands among the flowers. Not stone, not wood, but rusted steel, reborn as whimsy. Here, tools long stripped of their purpose rise again with new grace. A bird balances on the spine of old scissors, its wings shaped from the curve of a gas stove igniter, its perch a worn-out spoon. Below, calendula blooms hum softly in the breeze, their golden petals scattered like coins on cracked earth. The sculpture doesn't shout. It simply exists, humble and beautiful, a memory made visible. A few steps beyond, sentinels line the path. Each one, crafted from bolts, hinges, and scrap, stands no taller than a child's knee. But they hold presence. Like guardians with squared shoulders, these little metal beings march beside gravel and cosmos, casting elongated shadows that stretch and dance at sundown. Their arms are uneven. Their bodies lean slightly. But that's the charm. You can almost hear them creak when the wind picks up, not broken, just aged. And tucked in the sunlight near a brick wall, a different bloom appears. A flower not from seed, but from socket wrenches and iron nails. Petals of pliers. A stem made from a pipe wrench. Welded together and rising proudly from a terracotta pot overflowing with alyssum and pansies. The sculpture sways slightly with each breath of air, casting its silhouette like a signature on the bricks behind it. This kind of garden art isn't bought. It's assembled. It's dreamed. It starts with a box of odds and ends, a hand that knows how to grip pliers, and a heart willing to imagine life beyond utility. The best part? There are no rules. One person's drawer of junk is another's toolbox of potential. You don't have to weld to participate. Strong adhesive epoxy or brackets can do wonders. Drill a hole in a wrench. Bolt it to a spoon. Build a bird, a flower, a figure. Anything that reminds the earth you're paying attention. And as your garden grows, with lavender humming, with bees tracing paths in air, these sculptures will remain. Not needing water. Not fearing winter. Just standing there, quietly transforming rust into poetry. In this place, beauty doesn't come from newness. It comes from story. From where? From knowing that even what was once discarded can still stand in the sun and matter again. Sometimes, beauty doesn't bloom from seeds or roots. Sometimes, it's born from rust and wind. In the soft morning light, a row of fan blades, once part of engines or machines, now lines the garden like metallic flowers frozen mid-spin. Their edges are worn. Their paint is faded or chipped. Some still shimmer with silver. Others are kissed with pastel pinks and blues. They aren't trying to pretend they're new. And that's precisely the charm. Behind these forged petals, snapdragons stretch skyward, vibrant and full of life. Cosmos dance in the breeze, their delicate heads nodding as if approving this odd, beautiful pairing. Metal and bloom, rust and blossom, history and hope. These blades weren't meant to decorate a garden. They once whirred to cool machines, unknown and unseen. But here, stuck gently into fresh-tilled soil, they begin a second life. As border, as fence, as sculpture, as conversation starters. There's something disarmingly human about this. A willingness to look at something discarded, maybe even dangerous, and ask, what else could you be? And the answer? A border that's not only functional but deeply personal. Each fan flower is different. Some were left bare, revealing the raw, industrial texture of aged metal. Others have been spray-painted in joyful colors: coral, sky blue, a splash of garden green. The brushstrokes are uneven. The rust peeks through. But the garden doesn't mind. Neither do the bees. In fact, they seem drawn to the contrast. For those who want to try, the process is wonderfully simple. Look for broken fans at junkyards or in old garages. Separate the blades from the motor housing. Smooth sharp edges if needed. A coat of primer can help paint stick, but it's not required. The imperfections tell the story. Then plant them, upright along your path, leaned against a fence, or scattered through flower beds like industrial blooms. Over time, they'll change with the weather. Rust deeper, fade more, and yet remain strong. Just like any good garden story. In a world that constantly demands the new, this little fence of fan flowers whispers a gentle refusal. It says, old things can still delight, still stand tall, still catch the light in unexpected ways. And maybe in your own backyard, you'll look at a pile of forgotten parts and see not junk, but the beginnings of a blooming, spinning, rust-kissed dream. In the stillness of early morning, when sunlight leans through the branches like soft fingers brushing earth, water begins to fall. Not from a hose or can, but from old oil bottles, flipped upside down and repurposed with quiet ingenuity. They drip with purpose, steady, clean, slow. One by one, these bottles, once lined up in garage shelves, sticky with grease and time, have been rinsed, cut, and given new life. Stacked vertically on a bamboo spine, each bottle has its bottom sliced open, allowing water to tumble downward in gentle streams, feeding the soil with a rhythm that feels as natural as breath. Below, lettuce leaves stretch out, wide and dewy. Radishes peek from beneath dark soil like shy, red marbles. The earth doesn't gasp for water here, it sips. In a nearby corner, 6 green oil containers have been fastened upside down to a simple wooden trellis. Their caps, now pierced with tiny holes, release soft droplets into the thirsty mint and parsley beds below. No plastic tubing, no pressure valves, just gravity and thoughtfulness. This is slow gardening. This is sustainability without the sparkle. The trick is beautifully straightforward. Wash the bottles thoroughly, especially those that once held motor oil. Let them dry. Then use a hot nail or drill to puncture the caps, controlling the drip rate. A small pinhole for herbs. A few more for thirsty lettuce. Turn the bottles upside down. Secure them to stakes or fences. Then let the sun and shadow do the rest. It's not about perfection. It's about participation, about noticing what's already in your hands. And it works anywhere, on a patio tucked behind an apartment block, in a side yard shaded by a single tree, or along the edges of a raised bed bursting with homegrown hope. Even children can help. Filling the top bottle becomes a small, satisfying ritual. The water level slowly descends, a quiet promise that roots below are never forgotten. And if the bottles scratch or cloud with time, that's part of the story. Each mark is a season, a harvest, a dry spell survived. In this garden, trash is never just trash. A bottle is a vessel, a drip is a gift, and the act of saving something, anything, becomes a thread that ties us gently to the earth. And the strawberries? They grow sweet, not because of what was bought, but because of what was rescued, reimagined, and allowed to give again. There's a sort of poetry in letting vines write their own path. In a backyard barely wide enough for a wheelbarrow to pass, a weathered fence stands patiently. Years of sun and rain have grayed its surface, softened its edges. It asks for no attention. But today, it gets a companion, a salvaged square of wire mesh, once used to hold concrete or cage animals, now pressed gently against the slats. The mesh is not perfect. It's bent where it was once folded. Some corners fray, tied back with garden twine that's more hopeful than strong. Yet in this imperfection, there's quiet beauty. Because now, it carries something alive, sweet peas, curling and stretching upward, leaning into the light with petals like watercolor dreams. Pinks and purples nod in the breeze, and fallen petals scatter like whispers across the mulch. In another nook, clematis finds its foothold in chicken wire, its tendrils weaving through hexagons of rust and age. The wire sags a little, clinging to two old timber posts as if it remembers its former life, before it held blossoms instead of boundaries. Behind it, a mint-green patio chair sits in stillness beside a metal watering can. The scene is quiet, humble, and real. Then there's the raised bed, where pole beans twist up another piece of forgotten mesh, climbing like children on a jungle gym. The pods dangle with weight and promise. The wire grid doesn't mind. It bears the burden proudly, its uneven pattern becoming the vine's only map. What ties these ideas together isn't symmetry or style, it's intention. Reusing old mesh for climbing plants doesn't just save money. It transforms junk into structure, waste into rhythm, a wall into a vertical garden. And even in the smallest of spaces, especially in them, growing upward is an act of quiet rebellion. A declaration that beauty doesn't need space, or perfection, or a shopping cart. It only needs a start. And in gardens like these, you'll find it, tangled in the rust, rooted in the soil, reaching for the sky. In every broken thing, there's a quiet invitation to see not what it was, but what it can become. Here in a pocket-sized patio, framed by weathered fences and raised stone beds, an old metal ladder has found its second life. One leg is missing. The paint is flaking. Yet it stands, propped and tied to a bamboo stake, now bearing the vibrant weight of tomato vines. You can almost hear the creak of its joints as the plants twirl around the rungs. Ruby red fruits dangle like ornaments in a garden that expects nothing fancy, only something real. A few steps away, against a stark white brick wall, another ladder leans with grace. Its wooden spine is chipped, a rung or two gone, but that doesn't stop the morning glories. Blue blossoms bloom like soft sighs, weaving through each step as if climbing toward a forgotten sky. A terracotta pot rests nearby, filled with something just beginning, tiny sprouts pushing through dark soil, unaware that they're growing in the shadow of something discarded. And then, tucked along a back fence, we find a horizontal twist. A broken ladder has been lashed sideways with rope and care, turned into a floating shelf for potted herbs. Rosemary, mint, and thyme sit proud in their humble containers, each guided gently upward by twine tied to their stems. The setup is simple, familiar, the kind of thing anyone could try with a bit of string and a bit of hope. What these ladders teach us is more than how to grow vertical. They teach us that structure doesn't have to be strong to be meaningful. That beauty often grows best from something weathered. That a tiny backyard, even a narrow one pressed between walls, can feel like a place of purpose when we let plants rise on the bones of the past. If you've got an old ladder tucked in the shed, take it out. Let it lean, let it carry vines or cradle pots. Let it be imperfect and useful all at once. Because in a garden, even the broken can bloom. Some evenings deserve more than silence. They call for warmth, not just in the air, but in the soul. Along this gently curving gravel path, something magical unfolds. Standing in quiet rows like sentinels of old, short metal pipes, once rusting in forgettable corners, now cradle soft light in their upcycled crowns. Each one capped with a glass jar, perhaps once filled with pickles or preserves, now holding flickering tea lights. The glow is gentle, like a whisper guiding your steps. These lanterns do more than illuminate. They tell stories. Old pipes, uneven in shape, once discarded from garden repairs or plumbing leftovers, now carry elegance in their imperfection. Their rust adds character, not decay. Their sturdy presence steadies the eye and the spirit, as lavender sways nearby, its fragrance curling into the evening. Look closely, and you'll see how simplicity can be beautiful. In another corner of the garden, the same concept takes on a new form. Here, mason jars dangle from gentle black shepherd's hooks, secured to angled metal sleeves rising from the ground like open mouths catching the last rays of sun. The marigolds below beam brighter in their company, while succulents offer texture and contrast, a quiet celebration of form and color. And as dusk deepens, the lights begin their shift, not to chase away the dark, but to soften it. And sometimes, the most unexpected details hold the most charm. In the quietest border near the daisies and purple salvia, you'll find smaller pipes. Narrow, darkened with use, yet firm in stance. Their lights, flickering like fireflies trapped in old spice jars, bring a kind of nostalgia. They remind us of simpler times, of lantern walks, of dinner in the yard, of stories told when the power went out and the stars did their job. These DIY pipe lanterns are not hard to make. What they require is intention. Collect your old pipes. Don't worry if they're mismatched. Cut them to varying lengths for rhythm. Fine jars, mason, jam, even spice jars will do, and pair them with LED candles or solar lights. Mount them firmly into soil or concrete. Add your plants, think texture and height, thyme, lavender, marigold, or even sage. Then step back and let the twilight do the rest. It's not just about upcycling. It's about presence. Let your garden glow not just with light, but with memory, creativity, and the quiet joy of doing something with your own two hands. There was a time when these boxes sang. Once, these old speakers pulsed with rhythm, the heartbeat of a party, the soundtrack of slow Sunday mornings. Now, their wooden chests no longer hum with bass, but cradle life in a new, quieter harmony. Lined up against a humble backyard fence, they rest. Hollowed out carefully, thoughtfully, their tired electronics removed and replaced with soil, roots, and the soft rustle of leaves. A second life has begun, and this one whispers in petals and petals alone. Bright begonias rise proudly from the frames, red like vinyl jackets from decades past. Daisies, white and innocent, sway near ivy that trails lazily over speaker holes once filled with woofers and cones. The transformation isn't clean. There are smudges of earth, some corners of the veneer peeling. Yet in that imperfection lies the charm. The wood bears history, and now it also bears blooms. If you're wondering, yes, it's surprisingly doable. You don't need perfect tools or carpentry skills. You just need to open the back, pull out the wires, or leave a few dangling if you like a touch of honest nostalgia, and add a liner or waterproofing layer before filling it with soil. Herbs, flowers, even succulents, they take well to this unusual planter as long as the drainage is thought through. And in the golden morning light, when bees float lazily past the petals and the garden hums its own gentle tune, it feels as though the music never truly stopped. It just changed form. So the next time you see a dusty old speaker destined for the curb, pause. Listen. There might still be something beautiful waiting to grow inside it. There is something tender about giving forgotten things a new purpose, a softness in restoring what time has left behind. Printer trays, once guardians of alphabets and stories in ink, now cradle a different kind of script, one written in soil, moss, and quiet succulence. Along the wooden fence, rows of these weathered trays hang like windows into miniature landscapes. Each compartment is a gentle stage, some filled with rosettes of pale green echeveria, others with jade that curls and stretches, reaching toward morning light. There are tiny pearls that dangle like strands of rain, and patches of moss soft enough to hush a whisper. No tray is perfect. The paint flakes away, the wood holds onto its cracks, and yet, that's the charm. These imperfections echo the garden story, a place for patience, texture, and the unexpected. The juxtaposition of soft, plump succulents tucked within these rigid compartments invites you to linger longer, to peer closer, to see how harmony is found in contrast. In one corner of the yard, a single tray leans against a brick wall, shaded slightly by the curve of a strawberry leaf. The fallen leaves at its base don't need sweeping, they're part of the scene. They remind us that nature doesn't aim for perfection. It simply adapts, thrives. If you're tempted to try this yourself, the process is more forgiving than you think. A discarded printer tray, a bit of breathable fabric behind the compartments, and soil mixed with sand. The key is choosing low-maintenance succulents that love being slightly neglected, the kind of plants that thrive in small spaces and bright shade. And maybe that's what makes this idea so irresistible. It doesn't ask much. It doesn't shout. It just adds quiet charm to the corners of your garden or patio, one square at a time. It offers you a living mosaic, something you can shape, expand, or let stay small, like a secret shared between you and the fence. Sometimes, beauty begins in places we least expect, in the dents of a rusted rim, in the hollow center of discarded metal. In these humble forms, a new kind of garden emerges. One not manicured, not curated, but rooted in character and quiet intention. The herb circles sit nestled into gravel and grass like forgotten relics that found a second life. Some rims gleam faintly under the afternoon sun, their silver still shining through the scratches. Others wear coats of olive, rust, or cream, earthy tones that feel at home against the wooden fence. From their circular hearts, the green rises. Fragrant basil with leaves like silk. Chives that lean gently in the breeze. Sage with its velvety touch. Oregano, rosemary, thyme, each one bringing with it not just flavor, but memory. The memory of meals cooked slowly, laughter around tables, and soil that smells like morning. There's something poetic in the symmetry. Car rims, once designed for motion, now standing still, holding life instead of wheels. And yet, they remain perfectly round. Perfectly useful. If you're wondering whether this is a project worth trying, consider this. You need no great workshop, no specialty tools. Just soil, seeds, and a few hours of quiet tending. Most old rims already have central drainage. If not, a few hammer taps and a drill can set them free. Fill them with compost, nestle your herbs in, and let them speak. What grows here isn't just plants. It's pride. It's proof that sustainability isn't only about doing more with less. It's about noticing the value in what others might overlook. And when bees come hovering, drawn to chive blossoms and parsley flowers, you'll feel it, the joy of making something both kind to the earth and deeply personal. A little herb circle, framed in metal, filled with intention. There's a kind of peace that drips slowly, like rain from an old spout, like memory from the edge of time. It doesn't come loud or proud, but soft, like the trickle of water from a rusted exhaust pipe, now reborn into something gentle and kind. In the quiet corner of a garden, where succulents bloom beside burnished stone, someone once welded together a memory. It began with discarded exhaust pipes, some curved, some scorched with heat marks, others rough with rust and soot. Most people would pass them by, seeing only the grime of yesterday's machines. But here, under a thoughtful hand, they've been given a second rhythm. From one pipe, water spills in a thin line into a basin of river rock. It's held upright by pebbles and moss, surrounded by creeping thyme that's found comfort at its base. A wind chime sings nearby, the notes hollow and wooden, as though the breeze itself were bowing in appreciation. The effect is serene, neither manicured nor artificial. Just quiet motion. A pulse for the garden's soul. Another corner shows a more rugged design. A bent pipe leans proudly from a pillar of reclaimed bricks, pouring water into a dented metal pail. Ferns unfurl behind it, their soft green contrasting the pipe's industrial orange. The bucket catches the flow with a soft plunk, echoing against the stones beneath. Nearby, an old stool and watering can wait their turn. Tools turned companions, reminders that this place is still alive, still worked, still tended. And then, there is the sculpture, a vertical totem of fused pipe segments, welded with care and shaped for sound and flow. Water cascades from opening to opening, each level a note in a melodic descent. The weld marks are not hidden. In fact, they shine like brushstrokes on metal. Each burn, each seam, tells the story of the transformation, from exhaust to expression, from machine to movement. What makes these fountains truly magical is not just their sound or shape, but their origin. They are not store-bought. They are not perfect. And that is precisely why they soothe. If you're considering crafting one yourself, don't worry about the precision of welding or the elegance of the basin. Begin with what you have. Look at the exhaust pipe not as junk, but as sculpture in waiting. Pair it with a bucket, a bowl, or even an old sink. Let gravity do the rest. A simple submersible pump is enough to complete the circuit. The water will speak for itself. And if you fear the flaws, let them show. Let the rust peek through, let the weld lines remain. These are the fingerprints of transformation. These are the marks of the maker. In gardens like these, where machines find mercy and silence learns to sing, you don't just decorate. You restore. Not just metal, but spirit. Not just garden corners, but parts of yourself you forgot you could revive. In the quiet stillness of a small backyard, where light filters gently through slats in the fence, something beautiful has taken root in steel and rust. Once a forgotten storage rack, its dark iron bones weathered and flaking, now stands tall against the garden wall, reborn as a living vertical canvas. The old shelf, slightly bent at the corners, doesn't pretend to be new. It embraces its imperfections, and in doing so, becomes all the more inviting. Tiers of terracotta planters hold blushing geraniums and silver-green ivy, tumbling down like laughter over aged shoulders. Elsewhere, on a shaded patio, another frame tells its own story. This one is smaller, more intimate, rusted edges, chipped paint, and all. It cradles a mismatched collection of mugs, cans, and glass jars. Some still carry echoes of coffee and conversation, now filled with rosemary, mint, and tender romaine. There's a whisper of cobwebs in the corners, reminders of patience and stillness. And in a corner where strawberries ripen beside spinach leaves, a sleek, matte black rack rises from concrete. Drawer bins, repurposed as planters, cradle the soil with surprising elegance. Mud-caked gloves hang nearby, evidence of care, of early mornings and quiet triumphs. This isn't just about vertical gardening. It's about noticing the overlooked. It's about seeing beauty not in spite of wear, but because of it. Practical tip. If you're starting your own vertical garden, look for disused metal shelving. Ensure stability by anchoring the structure to a wall or fence. For containers, think creatively. Anything that can hold soil and drain can become a planter. Drill a few holes for drainage and line the base with pebbles if needed. Sometimes, the best gardens aren't built from new wood or polished ceramics, but from stories, from memory, from scraps that remember the hands that once used them. There's something poetic about watching life bloom from forgotten screens. At first glance, these CRT televisions, relics of another time, seem like artifacts from a dusty attic. But here in the garden, they've found new purpose. Where static once flickered, kale now stands proud. Where antennas once reached skyward, sunflowers sway in the wind. Stacked neatly along a fence, hollowed-out TV frames have become raised beds, their thick plastic edges still bearing the marks of age, cracks, scratches, and patches of moss. Yet within those worn frames, the soil is alive. Spinach pushes up with confidence. Nasturtiums spill over like golden flames. A small corner in this garden has been lovingly labeled Pollinator Corner, where bees hum joyfully around marigolds. 2 TVs, one atop the other, cradle a bright bouquet like an altar to renewal. Nature doesn't mind that the knobs are missing or the screens are broken. All it needs is a pocket of earth and a bit of sunlight. Practical tip: when repurposing old electronics for gardening, safety comes first. Remove all interior components, especially glass tubes and wires. Use the empty shell as your planter. Line the inside with landscape fabric to hold the soil, and drill holes in the base for drainage. Place mulch around the base for neatness and moisture retention. Old TVs may no longer tell stories with images and sound, but in your garden, they'll still capture attention, and maybe even admiration.